Hey guys, it's Jay. This is the latest find. I got this on Facebook Marketplace. When I saw the listing, the guy had it listed for 150 bucks. It is a Fender Deluxe, Hot Rod Deluxe. And what I've learned about it so far is that it is the second edition. This was built in 2006 and it is made in Mexico. And when I got there to pick it up, there was all kinds of problems with it, and luckily I ended up talking the guy down to 40 bucks because I had no clue what was going on with it. The reverb was squealing like a banshee, the power was super low, it wasn't doing anything, and so I talked him down and picked it up because I wasn't really going for a project. I was just trying to find a good deal. And the weirdest thing that I discovered, so I looked on YouTube like I always do. I found a ton of information about these amps from D-Lab, from Sonic Audio, Stuart, the UK amp guy, I believe his channel is, and there's a ton of information about what normally goes wrong. And the typical things that go wrong with these are all the capacitors here are really bad quality from what everybody says. The other problem that happens is that these two resistors here are really close to the board, and they get really hot. And then there's usually some stuff that goes on with the ribbon cables and the connector, or the solder joints on the connectors, and then the solder joints on the tube sockets. So I figured, you know what, I should be able to fix this fairly easily. And the first thing I struggled with was the reverb tank. Whenever you turn the reverb on at all, it was squealing. So I ended up taking the reverb tank apart, and one of the springs on the reverb tank was broken off the end. It wasn't like it was just disconnected, it was completely broken off. And don't know if you can see it here, if this will focus in, but the actual leads look like they broke off. So at any rate, I pulled one of the springs off. The reverb still works. I'm sure it's not sounding as good as it could with both springs in there, but it still works, sounds okay. And then the other thing I did was I measured the heat. I was curious to see what was going on with this thing, and I wanted to measure the heat. So let me plug this in. Unplug that. Yeah, the other piece was that the jewel light was out too. So luckily I had a bulb for that. And what I noticed is there were some couple of hot spots here. I really wanted to see how hot the, A, if the tubes were getting super crazy hot, and then B, if, how hot those resistors were. Because there is some, I've taken everything apart, I've pulled the board out, and I've just basically secured it back on with one nut just to keep it functional for now. The thing I noticed was that there were a couple of hot spots. I don't know if you can see that with my thermal imager, but that resistor is getting up to over 200, somewhere around 200 degrees, 210, 220 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's that resistor right there, this guy here. So that resistor is getting real hot, so I ordered a 3-watt version of that resistor, and then when I install it, I'll stand it off a bit. I know that this capacitor here is leaking, possibly maybe contributing to the fact that that resistor is getting so hot, not sure. The other caps, a couple of them, I measured them in circuit, so I don't know how accurate the measurements are, but one of them is pretty bad as well. It's not anywhere near what it should be. And then the other thing is just how hot this pair of resistors gets. And let's see if I can focus that in there. but the hot spots on those resistors are 150, 170, so they're pretty hot. So what I've done, initially when I was playing it, I fixed the reverb, stopped the squeal, but it still wasn't pulling good volume at all. I mean, like I was cranking it up to 7, 8, 9, and normally when you crank a 45 watt amp up to 7, 8, or 9, it's gonna rock the house and blow your brains off, and it was really, really weird. So I started doing some troubleshooting, and one of the things that Stuart from UK said was to bypass the preamp section and just go straight into the power amp section. So I went to do that, and I went to plug my guitar cable into the power amp input, and it wouldn't go in. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what was happening. I could insert it into the output jack, but the preamp, so I got my flashlight out and my magnifying glass, and there was something stuck in the power amp input, and I'll show you what I pulled out of there. It was the weirdest thing, but this is what I pulled out of there. So somebody, and what I did, if you do a Google image search on that, this is a cigarette roll paper tip or some type of it's a cigarette, like a marijuana paper. It's a marijuana papers company, and somebody had pulled that out and had stuffed it down into the power amp input jack. Once I fished this thing out with a pair of tweezers and needle nose pliers, magically everything started working. Now we still have leaky capacitors, and we're still going to fix the resistors that are getting too hot. I've got replacement resistors for these guys. I've got a 3 watt replacement for that guy. I've got new caps over here. I'm going to reflow all of the joints. Once that's done, we should be back in business. So I'll come back after I do that work and show you guys what's up. Just to show, there is, if we can pick it up in this area, this is the back of the board here where those ceramic resistors are. So it's starting to get hot, starting to get a little black in this area. Not horrible from some of the examples that I've seen on some of the other repair videos, but obviously if that continues for long periods of time, it's just going to keep getting worse. So we're going to fix that, and then over here, this is where that other resistor is heating up the board as well. And you can see it's not horrible just yet, starting to get discolored and not going to be good. So I'm going to start pulling all these things and reflowing all these joints. Okay, it is back together. Still, even with the larger resistor there and the 3 watt, it's still running 192, but I did stand it off quite a bit off the board so it doesn't heat the board up. Same thing over here on these 5 watt resistors. They're running about 180, but I stood them up off the board quite a bit just to keep the board from getting so hot, and recapped it. I got to put it all back together. It's a little noisy right now because it's not grounded properly, but so far so good. All the repairs are done. Did all the caps, backed the resistors up off the board, and let's check it out. Here's the clean channel. More volume. Channel.